All right. So today I have a treat for you mamas because I have Miss Jamie Ortiz with me on the podcast today. And I'm just so excited about all the things that she's going to share with us and all, the questions that I'm pretty sure a lot of you moms have that we will get to go over. Um, so let me see here. Let me find the introduction so I could introduce her properly here. Um, all right. So Jamie is a triple certified pediatric sleep consultant working with children up to 6 years old. Her certifications include pediatric sleep consultant as well as sleep consulting for children on the autism spectrum and for children who are fostered and or adopted. So Jamie, just tell us a little bit about you and where you are your mom. Just let us get to know you a little better.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk about sleep because I'm obviously very passionate about it. I love sleep, which is why I got into it. But I am a mom of two little kids. I'm a military wife. I was raised in Orlando. Right now, I'm living in Central Texas. But most of the families that I work with are East Coast time.
Mm.
So that's always like really great because then I'm an early bird. So when we're troubleshooting and working, with baby sleep, I'm still like an hour behind. So I have a lot of energy to like really focus on the families that I help. But yeah, I mean, I love reality TV. I love reading. I
Oh,
used to be a ballroom dancer back in the day. Um,
wow.
I know I
That's
miss it
impressive.
every day, every day, every day. I miss it so
Oh.
much. Yeah, and I'm just really honestly passionate about serving these families because I've seen a lot of what can happen when you're sleep deprived. And
Mhm.
so some specifically moms feel like they need to stay in that tired cycle and you really don't. So my job is to come in and work with the moms based on what they're comfortable with, what their baby or their toddler or their child can do, and then just kind of let them get the sleep help that they really need.
That's so awesome. Because I know, like you said, sleep is so important and so vital.
Yeah,
Can you share with us, like, why do you think it's so important for us to, help our kids get a good night's sleep?
there's so many health benefits to sleep, and especially if we have like younger babies and toddlers, most of the memory storage happens in sleep. Recovery throughout the day of like muscles or if they're sick happens when they're sleeping. Their brain obviously is growing like every day. And
Mm.
how does it grow nice and proper? With good sleep. It affects their mood swings, right? It will affect sometimes the way that they eat. And even for parents, I've had couples argue in front of me. I've had them scream. I've had them cry. I mean, it just like there's like it can create a divide in your relationship if you're that tired. I've had couples where they don't even sleep in the same room and it's been over a year because
Wow.
child is in bed and they either mom's not ready to let go or she doesn't want to, or the child says something letting mom think that they're not ready yet.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, usually it's the dad. Usually your husband is the one just kind of on the outskirts, and that's just not okay with me.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's definitely not fair to the dads, right?
Absolutely.
Um and yeah, I totally can relate to that. And it's something that for me, like I know if they don't get enough sleep, they're not getting like, the proper rest that they need. Their brain is not getting because I think something happens, like maybe you could elaborate on that, but I think something happens when you're sleeping where your brain kind of like washes away like the toxins in your brain so that
Mhm.
your brain can develop better and when you wake up. So if your children are not getting that sleep, and then if the child doesn't sleep, then the whole family is not
That's
really
okay.
sleeping. So it's like a ripple
Right.
effect,
Yeah.
right? Of, just nobody's getting sleep basically.
Right. It really does affect everybody, usually mom, more
Mm,
than anything, because kids tend to be a little bit more, especially in the younger years, mom, mom, mom. And
mhm,
so either mom starts kind of ignoring, and not on purpose, but just you're tired, you're not really focused, either the spouse or other kids, if there's other kids involved, because you're so tired that number one, and we've all been there when we're just too tired and we're grumpy, We
Yeah,
take it out on everybody, and it's just because
definitely.
there's not enough sleep going on. And that's not even related to your child not sleeping. That's just us in general as adults, right?
Right.
If
Right.
we don't have a really good night's rest, we wake up and we're just like, we're not functioning the way that we
Yeah.
want to,
We're
right?
cranky, we're
So,
sluggish. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And so if you want to be present for your kids, because let me tell you, I have great sleep, my kids have great sleep, but they're still draining because they have all this energy throughout the day. So imagine doing that on top of not sleeping, because
Yeah.
the kids are going to have energy, 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 regardless of if they're tired or not. They just have this energy. So to do it while you're tired, I mean, it's just not, you can only go like that for so long before it starts affecting something else.
Yeah. So, what would you say are like some great tips to getting your child to sleep? I mean, I know you have like a customized plan that you do with each,
Yeah.
individual and each family, but is there like some general tips that you can give the moms out there to help their child, get a good night's sleep?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say is, before you even have children, have the conversation with the father, and
Mhm.
let them know, are we bringing baby to bed? Or are we not bringing baby to bed? Start those
Right.
expectations, because that was what helped a lot of me personally, and a lot of other people that I know, where it was like, no, we're, no matter what we do, we will not be bringing them to bed, because once they do and they get that good bed sleep, it's very hard to get them out. Now,
Mm.
if you're both on the same page and you're like, hey, like, we want to co-sleep, we want them in the bed with us, that's great. But it's important to have everybody on the same page, because if not, then that's where we can start to see where now the husband's sleeping outside the room, or maybe he's in the room but now nobody's sleeping, because you're like, and I, with my daughter, there were times where she would end up in bed with us and I wouldn't sleep. I was
Mhm.
tired. I was like, am I going to squish her? Is she going to fall off this bed? Like,
Right.
nobody was still sleeping, regardless of if she was in a pack and play or she was with us, when she was like baby. So set those expectations, at least have the conversation. Things, of course, change when you're actually going through it, but at
Mhm.
least the conversation's there. And have sort of like a plan ahead of time of how you're going to deal with baby, who's going to take what shift, that type of thing, just so that everybody, specifically mom, can rest.
Mm.
Once baby is here, and this is just really basic for all the families, it's not like something that's specialized for each child. It's good all across the board, which would be white noise, brown noise, or pink noise. Some
Mm.
babies don't like the white noise. It's just, we say, hey, some white noise, because it is that same whooshing sound that they hear in the womb. So it's a familiar sound. So it's like a continuation of, once they're born, of what they had when they were in the womb. Um,
Okay.
some babies don't like that, and that's okay. If you have an older child and maybe they're sensitive to sound, or maybe they were born prematurely, or if they are on the autism spectrum, that sound can actually overstimulate them. And so,
Mhm.
which case we would say, okay, do something like the waves, pink or brown noise waves, where it's not so staticky, but it's like a constant frequency.
Okay.
And kind of see how your child responds, and you get to know your child enough to know, what they like and what they don't like.
Mhm.
um, a dark room, again, we want to simulate the womb, especially for our newborns and our babies like 8 months and younger. We like a dark room. The other thing is that when babies are born, they don't produce melatonin anymore. So the only reason they were actually able to fall asleep a lot during the day, while they were in the womb, is because they're feeding off of mom's melatonin production. Once they're
Oh.
out of the womb, they do not create melatonin until about 3 4 months of age, which is why one of the reasons, at least, why babies wake up so much at night and sleep.
Night, right.
I have like no
Yeah.
idea. Like,
Oh,
oh, it's night,
okay.
I gotta be going to bed. So
Yeah.
a nice dark room that kind of helps aid the simulation of the womb. They tend to go to sleep a little bit easier. And then just for older kids, it's just a distraction if there's a lot of light coming in, right? It
Mm.
can be like, oh, like right now it's the summer, it gets dark really
Yeah,
late. My
right.
son noticed it, and he's like, well, why am I going to bed? The sun's
It's
out.
still right, it's still daylight.
Right. And they don't understand. First of all, it's bedtime. Okay.
Right.
Also, the sun doesn't, at least in Texas, it does not set until 9:30.
Yeah.
Like, you're not staying up until
Until
9:30
9:30, yeah.
because the sun is still out. So, blackout shades, blackout curtains. And then again, also for them, even them, it does still aid melatonin production, especially in like those longer summer days.
Right.
Um, and then if you have a toddler or younger, I would say just kind of follow wake windows. They're a little bit different for each age group, but it just kind of helps guide parents to know, okay, usually between, you know, like 30, 40 minutes after my child wakes up, they have about 2 to 3 hours before their body kind of requests or needs to go back to either bedtime or nap time. So
Okay.
depending on your child's age, just follow those wake windows. It's a range, which is why I can never say anything specific. It's just depending on their age, this is what a wake window range looks like. And then pay attention to your child and see if they're kind of giving you those cues of I'm actually getting tired. And then you lay them down for nap or bedtime before they become overtired, because that's a whole other issue.
Yeah,
If
because
they're
then it's like harder to get them to
it very much
fall
is.
asleep,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
Those are such great tips. So basically blackout windows, white, brown, or pink noise, kind of, figure out which one works best for your child,
Mhm.
right? Those are some great tips. But my son is like he's 6 right now,
Yeah.
and he actually likes to have light in the room to fall asleep.
Mhm.
So what do you recommend when it's, like no, they need a light or otherwise they're scared and,
It
it's
doesn't
too
affect
dark?
as much at that age. You can kind of that's actually where things start to shift. And even with my own son, they were coming to change the screens in the house. And I'm dramatic. I have a blackout shade and a blackout curtain. So
Oh,
it's dark.
dark.
And it is very much dark. And he has a night light, but it's a red bulb because that's better for sleep than a
Oh,
regular one, right? But
okay.
now he's at the age where it's like the fear, being scared of the dark, even the red light is not enough. So when we took out the blackout shades, he noticed, he's like, wait, why does my room look different? And I just started laughing and he goes, is that the sun? And I'm like, yes, he's
Yes.
never seen the sun come through his room. I'm like, yes, it is. And he's like, this is nice. And I'm like, so I was like, okay, you know what? He's old enough now where like sleep is set. He's
Mm,
afraid of the dark. I took the blackout shade off. I have the blackout curtain on that's not fully blacked out.
okay.
So while he's kind of laying down and getting ready for sleep, there is a little bit of light peeking through. It's honestly, it's not a big deal. I prefer that than a regular nightlight, to be honest with
Okay.
you. Because eventually, if your son doesn't wake up throughout the night,
Mhm.
then all he really needs that light for is to just get him to sleep and kind of feel comfortable and safe, and that's completely okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when do you think like, because I'm thinking about like when my son was younger, like what are the cues for like a mom that has a little one
Mhm.
to know, okay, yeah, it's time to put him down for a nap or it's time to, put him to bed. Like what are some things that moms need to be looking out for
Right.
and their child and be like, okay, now I know that, they're ready for a nap. So they know like
Yes.
what that window is for their child.
So usually we see it more for when your child is younger than a toddler, right? So I mean, now they kind of say toddlers are like once they turn a year old, they're a toddler. I still don't really believe it. To me, you're a toddler at 2 years old, but
Okay.
scientifically, at 12 months, they're now considered a
A
toddler.
toddler.
So I'm talking about before that, right?
Okay.
So you want to look out for these sleepy cues, right? It could be dark circles under the eyes. It could be red eyebrows. We obviously know
Mhm.
the yawning. We know that it could be they start to cry. They start to have a little bit of a tantrum. Some babies get spaced out and they're just like not really. You're like talking and they're just like their eyes glaze over, just like us sometimes, right? So
Mm,
those are the sleepy cues, and you want to start. I always tell parents anyway, start tracking that and start noticing if they're not already on a schedule.
right.
Start noticing what times you're noticing all of these things, because more than likely they're already on their own type of schedule. Their
Mhm.
body's already doing it around
Right. They
the same
have their own rhythm that
thing.
they're following. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can work on solidifying that schedule and lay them down. Once your baby starts crying, they're overtired. So the
Mm,
early cues, right, would be the dark circles under the eyes. It could be the yawning. It could be the red eyebrows, or them just kind of like staring off into
that
space.
glazed look. Okay.
Yeah, those would be the early signs, and you want to offer them that nap or bedtime at that point until they are on a actual schedule.
Okay.
For toddlers, if around 4 or 5 o'clock they start to get this extra burst of energy, and you're like, "What in the world just happened?" They're
Mhm.
overtired.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's already
it's
past
already
that point.
done. It's already done. So you
Okay.
kind of have to like wait until those hormone and cortisol levels kind of come down,
Uh-huh.
and then they're a little bit easier to go to put for bed,
to
but
sleep.
it
Yeah.
takes a while. It can take a while for those hormones to come down. So just keep an eye on them. But if they look like they're losing their minds for these
Hmm.
toddlers, they're tired.
Right. Okay. That's such great tips. I also wanted to know, like with my son, it's hard for him to fall asleep. Like he'll just lay in bed
Mhm.
for a while
Yeah.
before he falls asleep. So do you have any tips to like help them fall asleep faster? Because I'll
Yeah.
put him to bed at like, let's say it's 8 o'clock, he's in bed and he'll literally stay in bed for like an hour or two before he actually falls asleep.
What does he do during that time? He's just like there.
He'll get up and get toys and play with toys at his bed, get a book or read a book at
Yeah.
his bed.
Does
So
that bother you? Where you're like, oh my gosh, or does he kind of leave you guys alone and he just does his thing and he's like, okay, and I'm gonna go to sleep now.
it's mixed. Sometimes he's fine and we're fine. We have our own time, and other
Yeah.
times he just keeps coming in the room like
Yeah.
every couple of minutes, and we're like, no, it's time for you to go to bed. But I'm also concerned that maybe he's not getting enough sleep because
Yeah.
if he has this window to get like all his amount of sleep that he's supposed to get, but he's not falling asleep during
Yeah.
that time, then I'm concerned that he's not getting enough sleep.
Right. So for his age, especially because he's about to be 7, really we're looking at like maybe 10 hours of sleep, maybe
Hmm.
9 if he's lower sleep needs. And that's something that's different for every child. Some kids are at the max and they're higher sleep needs. Some are lower and they need just the bare minimum and they're functioning fine all day. So
Hmm.
that's kind of like what you want to pay attention to. If you guys see that your kids are taking a longer time to fall asleep, but they're functioning great the next day, all day,
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
most part until it's time for bed, then that's your sign like, okay, they might be lower sleep needs. They might actually be getting the rest that they need. The other thing is bedtime the right time for him, which is
Mm.
tricky, right? Nobody wants to put their kid at bed at 9 o'clock at
Yeah,
that
no.
age. We're like, we're ready for bedtime.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of the times for summer, I don't know if you're only experiencing it right now, but in the
Mhm.
summertime, they're not as stimulated as they are when they go to school.
Right.
So, they have all this energy nowhere to go. Take them outside as much as you can. And I know in
Mhm.
Florida, it's like way too hot, but,
Yeah.
either do it as the sun's starting to come down or do it first thing in the morning before it starts to really, like get down on them. Open up your windows, let the natural light come in because that's still getting sunlight.
Mhm.
Um, and then pay attention to that bedtime. If that bedtime, and honestly, like 8 o'clock is age appropriate, but
Mhm.
there's something there where either he's just like, I'm honestly really like, I'm not tired.
Right.
And which case, if let him go, let him do what he wants to do.
Mm.
If he comes out over and over and over again, then I would tell parents, well, why don't you instill what's called the bedtime pass? The bedtime pass is like something super simple. You can get them on my website for free. You can make one up with a regular paper, construction paper, or let him kind of make it like a project to do it with you. And it's really easy. You give him one time or two, depending on what you guys are comfortable with.
Mhm.
You write what the pass is for. If he comes out and he's like, Mom, I want another hug. They love
Mhm.
to give hugs when it's
Oh,
like
yes.
time, right?
That's when
Okay.
they want all the hugs.
Right. So exactly, right. Well, where were you all day? I was waiting. I wanted your love. Now I'm ready to not get your love because I'm done with my day.
Right.
Now you want to come and give me all the hugs and kisses. Um,
Yeah.
my son would be like, I just want to check on you and like see how you're doing. And they come up with like all these
Of
little
course.
that are cute, but
Mhm.
they can use it excessively, right? It becomes
Right.
like their little tactic. So at that point, you can say, listen, this card gives you 2 hugs, 2 extra hugs after I leave your room. You can come
Mm.
back for the 2 hugs, but after that, you can't leave the room.
That's it. Gotcha.
So something like that, like whatever it is, whatever the reason is that they usually come out for, try
Right.
that. The other thing would be instead of saying you get 2 more hugs, you could say, here, I'm going to give you this pass. You can have 2 hugs, but if you don't use them and you stay in your room, then tomorrow, and then you give them something exciting about tomorrow, whether that's like we'll bake cupcakes or we'll look at, I don't know, whatever it is that whatever speaks to your child that'll like motivate them to stay in their room, then
Mhm.
kind of give them that option, and it makes them start to make more decisions like, okay, do I cash it, do I use these this bedtime,
Right.
or do I cash in tomorrow
Or do I save
that
it?
for that goal?
Right.
Um, and
I
then the other
love that idea
yeah,
of
it
giving
works for a
a
lot of
pass.
toddlers. I personally, like, I don't use it because my kids know once it's like you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
Like I don't mess around, and I'll let my son come out because he only does it like once. And then he just doesn't come back, and he hasn't been doing it because I've been wearing him out.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, and then he'll stay in his room. He'll sing to his room. In his room, he'll like sit up in his room. He'll look out the window in his room, but he does it in his room, and it does not involve me. And I'm
Right.
watching him the entire time because he'll be like 15, and I'll probably still have that monitor.
I'm the same way. Like we still have a camera in the room.
Yeah.
Um and and we're able to see like what he's doing in there because I'm like, for hours he'll just stay in
Yeah,
his
my
bed
friend
and
doesn't. She's like, whatever, as long as you don't come and get me,
right.
you
Right.
and
As long as you're in your room and your bed, then it's fine.
yeah, and
So
the room relaxed enough for
yeah,
sleep,
of
to
course.
sleep, and that might make it, if there's like a ton of light coming through and all that,
Mhm.
then their body's just not going to be at a relaxed state. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's bedtime.
Mhm. So I think that red light and the pass, I'm probably gonna implement those 2 because right now he doesn't have a red light in his room, so maybe I'll
Yeah.
I'll switch the light bulb. Um, so another question I had, mentioned activity definitely is helpful for them to fall asleep at night.
Mhm.
How important is it for nutrition?
Mhm.
Does that affect sleep at all,
It
or is it
absolutely
something
does.
that, moms should also consider?
Yes, they should, because we know that obviously if they're eating a lot of sugar before bed, that can kind of give them an extra boost of energy. When I work with families, I always give them a list of foods that help melatonin production. So we want to get them in as much as we can, just to kind
Mhm.
of, we're trying to give everything
Yeah.
that's gonna, because there's so many pieces to like the sleep puzzle. So I'm giving families all the pieces, and we're gonna put it together, right?
Yeah.
So bananas, yogurt, um, different types of beans. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of the other ones. I want to say, I can't remember what kind of fish, but fish is usually really good with that. There's over like 20 foods that are good for
That help
proper
to
for melatonin production. Yeah. So just to help like aid that. So I always say incorporate those things into their diet.
mhm,
Try and remove the red dyes at least like right after, like don't include it in dinner or after.
got you.
During the day, like if they're older kids, if they're younger kids that are napping, then we want to really take a closer look at how much they're feeding. For younger babies, we want to make sure they're going to bed on a full stomach, that
Mhm.
if they're old enough for solids, that the solids are in place, so that if we are dealing with them waking up throughout the night, we know it's not hunger related.
Yeah.
If it's a habit, or if it's hunger related, then we go and we deal with that, and work on getting their stomachs satisfied. And then for the toddlers, sometimes it's, they really are like, I just want something to drink, I want my bottle in the middle of the night, that
Mm,
type of thing. So then we work on changing that habit. And then for the older kids, it could be something as simple as already having a sippy cup, like not a sippy cup, their regular cups with like a lid, um, next to their bed. If they're not in
mhm.
the crib anymore, you can leave that there, so that they don't come out and wake you up and are like, Mom, I need water. Like, no, you're old enough. Your water's going to be right here. If you're thirsty, take a sip, go back to bed. Um, so little things like that, but the diet is very important. So when we work with families, that's, I always, especially like the younger kids, toddlers and younger, I'll ask them for at least 3 days of an intake of what is your child eating, how much, how often, especially with the babies. We want to make sure that they're getting all the calories that they need throughout the day, so that at night they're ready for bed, everybody's satisfied, and we can start saying, okay, well, they're not waking up because they're hungry, they're waking up because there's something else going on.
Going on, right?
Yeah, but diet is
Uh,
super important.
yeah. So how do you feel about the cry it out method? Do you
Mhm.
recommend it, or do you feel like it's something that is customizable to each family?
It's customizable. It really depends, number one, on the parents. And even then, more than what the parents feel, it's that child's temperament,
Mm,
right? So a lot of the time, stronger personality babies, they need more space. Your presence in the room will overstimulate them. And you can tell, because I've had plenty of videos sent to me of the baby, and baby is just mad. It's not like a I'm sad
mhm.
kind of cry. It's I'm you know, I'm just mad.
Mhm.
Parents step away for an extra minute and baby calms down and is just like hanging out, looking around, and he goes to sleep.
Mm.
Other babies are very sensitive sleepers. They need more of that affection. They need more of that touch. They need the presence in the room. So it
Mhm.
really depends on, where that baby is. For toddlers, it's very hands-on. I don't ever do anything where the parents really like walk away from them. I think it's a little bit different for toddlers. That's where you're really storing, like you're going to remember your toddler years. You're going to remember
Got you.
that when you start that fear at 2 years old, fear is
Mhm.
very real. Before that, they don't experience fear. That part of the brain is not developed yet.
Yet.
They might
Okay.
understand you're not in the room, but
Right.
there's not that, oh, I'm scared. That doesn't develop until 2 years because the brain's not there yet.
Okay.
So it depends on their age. Am I against a full cry it out? Yeah, I don't ever recommend a full cry it out. Will babies cry regardless of what we do? Yes, they will.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're changing a
That
habit. And so to
right.
tell parents, and I've seen this plenty of times where consultants are like, no cry method. That's all a lie. That's a lie
Mhm.
because you were changing a child's habit and their only form of communication is to cry. What we
Yeah.
can do is go in and change our check-in times or change how we're picking them up, change how they're falling asleep, things like that. But everybody has to be, the parents have to be comfortable with what we're doing or it will not work. They won't be able to sustain it. They won't be able to be consistent. And then we're going to go back to square one.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. When do you think is like a good time to I guess transition from, you know, either co-sleeping to putting them in the crib or from the crib to like a bed? Like when is
The
the best
best we
time?
want to wait as long as possible. The
Okay.
number one reason why toddler parents come to me is because they transition prematurely to the toddler bed or on any other bed, and the baby's all over the place. I'm sorry, the toddler is all over the place. So
Mm,
wait as long as you can. The typical age is at least 3 years old, and then transfer them over. If you are, sleeping in a bassinet, a pack and play, or co-sleeping, really around 4.5 months is a good age to kind of start making that transition to them solely being in their crib.
mhm.
And then again, we want to take a look at, well, is there any medical conditions? Is your child fostered or adopted? Because we're at that point, you're working on attachment. So we're not removing them from you at that point,
Right.
right? But the most important thing when you are kind of, at least for the toddler parents, when they are switching that from the crib to a toddler bed, is to make sure your child is already an independent and a good sleeper before you make
Mm,
those changes. That's the key.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I mean, like we're basically out of time already. This conversation went, by so quickly to me. But I wanted to see if you can just share, like a little bit about your faith. Because this is like a podcast geared
Mhm.
towards Christian moms.
Yeah.
And you have like such a beautiful story. I would love for, the moms out there to kind of hear a little bit of your testimony. And I just want to say thank you so much again for, hopping on with me and definitely also let everybody know where they could find you and, the type of services that you offer.
For sure. So I grew up in church my whole life. My dad was a pastor. I felt like since I was born. And I grew up in the faith. I never really had gone through anything to test my faith. It was just like, oh yeah, I go to church, I believe in God, I read my word, and then
Mm,
I was pregnant with our firstborn with for the first time. My husband was deployed. We were living in Hawaii. I flew back home to finish my pregnancy there to be around my family. And then my water broke at 5 months.
mm,
And so it was a boy. He was born prematurely, so his lungs hadn't developed yet, and so he ended up passing away. And that was the first time that I feel like my faith was honestly very much tested. um,
yeah,
you
of
don't kind of
course.
like, it
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
go
so
the way
sorry
you
about
plan,
that
right?
too.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I knew something was wrong the entire time I was pregnant. It never
Wow.
felt right. I had 3 dreams of the same boy in different stages. Um, and so like looking back, I'm like, okay, like God took him from me, right? He took him back. He doesn't belong to me anyway, right?
Mm,
Just kind of taking care of them
wow.
and growing with them until God says that's enough.
Yeah. Wow.
Either
That's a
or
beautiful
either there.
perspective to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They belong to the Lord. Yeah.
yeah, which you're always told, but you don't
Right. But
really
it's,
like,
yeah.
it has a different meaning when you lost one, right? You're
Sure.
like your mind just kind of shifts a little bit.
Yeah.
So obviously then it was never like, God, why did you take him from me? It was never like
Mhm.
that. I just remembered a Bible verse that I read when I was when I found out I was pregnant, and it was, he is the Lord, let him do what is good in his eyes. I don't know why it meant so much to me. I wrote it, I put it on my mirror. I
Wow.
looked at it every day. And the second I knew, okay, my baby's not going to make it, my brain went straight to that Bible verse. So
Mm.
there was all these little things God put in my place to kind of like, he didn't tell me, hey, I'm going to take him back, but
Right.
you know, but I had all these dreams of the same little boy, and I knew that he was my son. I knew he was a boy, even though the doctors couldn't tell what gender he was because I didn't have any fluid. So it wasn't until
Oh.
he came out that they were like, "Oh, he's a boy," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Duh, I've been telling you people, like I know."
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously then that's where you realize, and my dad always said it, he's like, well, this is where you're going to find out if this is like, if this is your faith or the faith of your parents, because you need to
Mm.
have your own, right? So
Right.
then got pregnant with my son, the one that we have now. And my husband was deployed again. And I ended up in the hospital for like a month and a half for being like super high risk. It was just, my body does not do pregnancy at all. It's just not happy with it.
Mhm.
But every time I was pregnant, it was like, you know, you remember the first time and you're like, oh my gosh. And anytime something feels weird, you're like, is it going to happen again?
Right.
So my faith started, that's where it really became like strong, more than
Yeah.
anything. So like there's no way of you surviving that and having your marriage not be questioned or anything unless you have a relationship with God, right?
Yeah.
And even then, some marriages struggle
Of
of Christian marriages.
course.
If you lose a child, it's like your marriage struggles, and we didn't, thank God, but we had um, people around us, specifically like my parents, that were like, "Don't let the enemy take a hold. Like you're gonna, these thoughts might come in. You might look at him, you might feel a certain way about your body, or maybe he starts thinking like, why did this happen? But like, do not let him,
Right.
you know,
Mhm.
like grab a hold of this marriage. Like so it didn't affect our marriage, thank God. But yeah, now we have two living kids and they're wild and crazy, but they're
Yeah, but
my
God, right? But
yeah,
God.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And my daughter was like an oops. We did everything to not, except abstinence, except the one thing that is guaranteed.
Right.
And we had just had a conversation, and I was like, ugh, no, like I'm good with Daniel. Like he's the only child that I need.
Mhm.
I felt fulfilled, right,
Right.
with my boy, and and I was like, oh, whatever. If I'm gonna get pregnant, God's just gonna do what He's gonna do anyway. And I
Right.
went to get my eczema treated, and they were like, no, you're pregnant.
Oh my
Literally,
God.
like not even a week after my husband and I had the conversation. And
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, what? I just couldn't stop laughing. The doctor was like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I just, God is funny.
Yeah, he is.
She's
He has good sense of humor.
right. And she's just on a whole other level. Like, I don't even know how we ended up with her, but she's on another level
Yeah.
of just like funny and wild and sweet. And she's like very Christian already without having
Mm.
accepted Jesus yet. She's 3, but you know, she's very sensitive to like the things of God. And it's
Oh,
really
I
funny.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I'm always like, no, he knew we needed her because
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story and such a beautiful like redemptive story of, how God turned it around.
right.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And if you would just let all the mamas know like how they can, reach you, what you offer, the type of services that you offer, and how
Absolutely.
they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So my Instagram is Little Ones Sleep Society, and it's under the same website, littlenonesleepsociety.com. And I offer one-on-one support services where we get on a call really quick. It's about 15 minutes. I just get a better picture of what's going on. And then I kind of send you the information, letting you know what services best fit what you're telling me, which is usually a 2-week support, a 3-week support.
Mhm.
Everything's with a customized sleep plan. And then for some parents, I like to offer things that are budget friendly for everybody. Everybody's on a different kind of budget type of place. And so I also offer my services through ihelpmoms.com, which is where we still work together, except it's more of like a meeting like this. It's virtual. We talk. I tell you, these are the things that we're going to work on for this week. We'll meet up weekly until we reach our goals. And it's just a way of really offering support for families regardless of what their financial background is, because there's a lot of the times It's tough
That's
to just
yeah,
shell
that's
out
the
a
thing that's
certain amount
holding
of
them
money.
back. Yeah.
Exactly, and they shouldn't just because it's sleep. So being able to offer the services through I Help Moms is like really amazing. And pray for every family, whether they know it or not, um, before we start our time together to make sure that the parents are getting what they need.
Yeah. Thank you so much for, being on here with me, and yeah, that was so great. And you are welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you.
And